forbidden and banned, the bane of bureaucrats, exposing mainstream media's weapons of mass distraction.
Flying under the radar and dropping truth bombs on tyranny.
It's Liberty Now. Kia ora, and hello. Welcome to Liberty Now, the podcast for discerning minds and common sense. We seek the truth, and we can think for ourselves. Be sure to hit subscribe on your favorite podcast player app, and don't worry about taking notes while you listen. You can get all the links, files, and show notes for this episode at libertynow.com. And I'm really interested to talk to my guest today. I would like to welcome Isabel Sam. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. And I thought it was going to be interesting, partly because I don't know if we would agree on every single thing perspective-wise. At the core, I think we would agree on the ideals of integrating, different cultures and things. But I think it would be a disservice to the audience not to also discuss it in the current reality, the context, especially in the United States, and especially with an upcoming election. Everything seems so contentious. This, in my opinion, and many people's opinion, is probably going to be one of the most important elections in U.S. history, I would say. But before we get into that, Isabel, tell me a little bit about your background and where you're coming from.
Yeah, so I'm first generation, born in the United States. My family comes from Bolivia, and we have gone through these same issues that we're having now in the United States before in Bolivia.
Yeah.
And then I also have another side of this that I can look into, is that my husband left socialism in Nicaragua when he was 11, because at 12 years old, the boys get drafted into the army under socialism.
12.
Yes. It's actually a very common thing in socialism. And I don't think it gets talked about enough. Like, you did see it with the Nazis. There were 14-year-old boys on the battlefield.
Wow.
But it's like these little blips that they talk about, and I'm like, no, it's actually pretty common under socialism that boys are put on the battlefield.
Wow.
So I kind of have these two different perspectives. My husband's country went through the same problems, but they delved straight into the really severe socialism, while my country, Bolivia, did go through several of these problems. They still have a lot of problems.
Yeah.
Every time someone tried to just put down the hammer of really, really severe socialism, the people would kind of cry out and say, no, we can't handle this anymore. And they would shut down the country, and that guy would be out.
Yeah.
And there's now a huge difference between Bolivia and Nicaragua. In Nicaragua, you can go, if you go on a college campus and you speak about freedom, you will be taken off that campus by policemen almost immediately. You will be put in jail, and you will be beaten regularly, so until they break your spirit.
Wow.
And in Bolivia, there are literally libertarian book clubs on college campuses.
Wow.
I'm like, there's a difference. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. That's amazing. And, I read Animal Farm in high school, and it was a real good allegory for, what the reality of what happens with this utopian ideal of socialism and communism.
Yeah.
And I know there are a lot of people on the liberal left who, are shouting for socialism as if it wasn't going to go straight into communism.
Right.
Do you believe that there is such a thing as some utopia that can be achieved with socialism that doesn't end up in the same sort of despotic rule as communism?
No.
I mean,
I mean,
there you have it. That's from somebody who's, who knows. Simple answer.
We have
no.
a saying. Yeah, we have a saying in Spanish that the goal of socialism is communism.
Right.
So,
Absolutely. Wasn't that Lenin? I think that said that.
Yeah, I think he's like I feel like everyone who's gone through this knows this saying at this point, right? And we all
Yeah,
have it in all of our own languages. And to think that this idea that you can give someone all this power and they're not going to go absolutely nuts with it
right.
is is just like the biggest logical fallacy you could ever contain in your
Man,
brain. Like it's just impossible. It has been tried in so many different methods. And then people look at me and they say, "Oh, well, you're just a free market capitalist. You don't really understand the side of socialism, right?"
yeah.
But I had an uncle who was president of Bolivia and he was a democratic socialist.
Wow.
It didn't work out.
From your mouth to God's ears. Yeah, so
Yeah.
true. Yeah, we've never seen it succeed. And that's what I love about the genius of the founding fathers, whatever anybody else may try to, how they might try to rewrite history about, what their motives were. They had the genius of setting up a republic where the people had the power of the
Mhm.
vote, and they had three branches, three co-equal branches of government, which is the best that we've seen in any society of checks and
Yeah.
balances to prevent that kind of terroristic government from taking over.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I think if we went back to even just what you know, the ideals of what it was that they were putting together, maybe not that women aren't equal to other human beings, and maybe some of them believe that, black people aren't equal human beings.
right.
We all have our problems, right? We all
Yeah.
see things incorrectly at times, right? And some of our founding fathers had those same issues. But I do think that, even with my views as a libertarian, like if we just went back to sort of closer to their views and actually practiced it, like I don't think I would even like squabble with other libertarians that it isn't the perfect version of libertarianism that I want. You know what I mean? Like I would probably just be like, hey, this is so much better than what we have right now. I will take it.
Right, right. Well, and as imperfect as the founders of America may have been, whatever faults you can dig into and try to pick them apart, the
Hmm.
system that they set up has brought us to the point where we can openly discuss, you know, our differences without being thrown
Yes.
in jail. And
Yes.
it brought about it led to the freedom of all peoples, and not just in America, but it spread to other countries. I mean, how can you argue with that? And yet,
Yeah.
they do. Um, it
All the time.
Yeah, it seems like trust fund babies, or rich kids who've inherited all this wealth, uh just do not appreciate what they've been given, and so they're rebelling against all the good stuff that they've been given, and they're just going to tear it down and destroy all the hard work that everybody did to build us up to this point of freedom that we have.
Yeah, it does feel like that. It feels like they really don't understand how difficult life can be, and they
Right.
don't understand how horrible governments can become. And I do
Yes.
think the rest of the world has a pretty good view of, some of the horrible things that are going on within our government because we have been acting upon those other people. And our government hasn't done those things to all of us too many times within the United States. More of it has come on us over the past 4 years, and I think
Yeah.
more of it is coming towards us. Um, but yeah, it's hard for people who have never lived it, never seen it, never experienced it to be able to put themselves in those shoes.
Yes, exactly. And I think that the most vocal, on the left, who are screaming about the change we need, are probably the ones who have never traveled anywhere or seen the conditions. I mean, I, I I feel very blessed that I've been able to travel a lot in my lifetime, to Eastern
Mm.
Europe, Western Europe, Asia, all over the place, and see what conditions are like. And the cool thing is like, people are people, everywhere you go. They all want the same things, the same freedoms, but the governments are quite different and can
Yeah.
impose different restrictions on them that make life not as good.
Mhm.
And you know, up until recently, America has been that ideal that has really raised the bar and held up an amazing standard. But like anything, it can be corrupted. And I
Yeah.
really don't think that we are in America are under a true republic, a democratic republic in operation as it should be under the Constitution. I don't know
Yeah.
where you stand on this, but I certainly don't believe that Joe Biden was legitimately elected president. It just has all the hallmarks of a banana republic overthrow. It's just that
Yeah.
when you've got the media behind you and that's all you watch, the mainstream media, you're just going to take that as the gospel. And all you have to do is
Yeah.
just read history, travel a little bit, to
Hmm.
get the real perspective. And I think you'll see what's really
Yeah.
going on.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, there are a lot of things that are very, very wrong within our government. And a lot of people are just starting to see it, or they're just starting to open their eyes to it. And the only thing that I can say is, I've seen it for so long, right? Because I grew up with this history from my family, right? So I grew
Right.
up
You
not
you were
trusting.
well aware from the
Yeah.
beginning, I'm sure.
Yeah, but the people who are now just seeing it and now just saying, "Oh, maybe we all do need to do something."
Yeah.
Like I just try and tell other people who don't have as much patience with them that I'm like, we still need to have a lot of patience with them. They're on our side.
Right.
They're gonna get there.
Yeah, it's funny, like, we all want the same things, at the core, even the most extreme right and extreme left. We want to be left alone. We want our freedoms. It's just, how do we go about it? And where do my rights end and the law begins? I think that's one of the big
Yeah.
differences is that on the left, they want to um, legislate and force good behavior, whereas on the right, we want to just um, legislate, bad behavior. In other words, you can do whatever you want until you overstep your bounds and break the law or take away somebody else's rights. Whereas the left just seems to be um, they believe that you're not even allowed to be offended or offend anyone.
Yeah.
And it's like, and that's where we get into freedom of speech and everything else.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Freedom of speech is dying for sure in this country. Florida just lost freedom of speech on all their college campuses
Wow, I
at
was
the
going to
beginning
ask
of
you
this
about
year.
that. So
Yeah.
you're in Florida, and
Hmm.
looking at it from overseas, Florida has been somewhat of a bastion of freedom, I would say. More red, more Republican, but definitely more pro free speech, gun rights, and those things. DeSantis seems to have been at least saying the right things.
Yeah.
And there seems to be this sort of migration, like a movement of people away, like the conservative people moving away from the liberal bastions of the West and East Coast, the main cities, San
Yeah.
Francisco, Seattle, and New York, and moving into, more conservative areas. And then the other way around, it's almost like an internal migration of people,
Yes.
within the US.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
is that what drew you to Florida at all, or you just sort of ended up there because of connections and family, or what?
Um, yeah, we ended up here really because we wanted to come back to be closer to my mother-in-law.
Cool.
Um, she uh, died due to a certain hospital following certain COVID
Uh,
recommendations, and
yeah, I'm
it
sorry.
was, yeah, it was very upsetting. I think the only way we could have won against that was if we would have literally had an army to go in there and charge the hospital and get her out.
Wow.
uh, DeSantis had shut down all the courts, so you couldn't go to court and get an emergency injunction to pull her out of the hospital when they were mistreating her. Uh, like Florida was shut down. We didn't have an extreme lockdown like some other states did, but the courts were shut.
Yeah.
So people had their rights trampled all over them left and right, and the courts were not open for anyone to be able to contest it. And it was pretty bad here. And a lot of
Yeah.
people just keep on saying, oh, well, we weren't as bad as these other states. And I'm like, so you're saying that we all got put in prison, but because we had a cell with a window,
Right.
we were better than the people with the cells without windows. I mean, like, I don't want
Right.
anyone in hell.
Well, Mussolini wasn't quite as bad as Hitler, so
Yeah, yeah, it felt like those comparisons. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, it's this relativism. It's like, we need to draw the line closer to our rights and not further away. But yeah, it's easy to have that relativistic view. Well, at least we're not as bad as them, but we're all heading that same direction. I really am concerned. We could do a whole
Yeah.
episode on the COVID lockdowns and everything. And I do think that was sort of the testing grounds for other things to come. But
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I felt like a dress rehearsal, right?
yes, yes. Um, and so, but that really brings us to the current climate. We're getting really close, and you can see all the drumbeat happening with in all kinds of media. There's going to be social unrest, and it's like the more you pound that drumbeat, the more you put it into people's minds, the more likely those kinds of things are going to happen when you put forth these limited options to people. It feels very deliberate, like we're being pushed into
Yes.
this to the point
Yes.
where America is just a powder keg waiting to go off, no matter what the outcome of the election is. Um,
Yeah.
in I've been thinking about this a lot, and I think that in the event that Trump were to win, we would see a lot more violence kick off from the left. Um, and if he weren't to win, there would be a lot of violence, but it would be blamed on the right. Like I feel
Yeah.
like there are a lot of uh, soldiers in wait, so to speak, that are just ready to kick off and blame things on the right. But
Yeah.
traditionally, the conservative, by its nature, people are more conservative and more
Mhm.
measured, and they want to engage in dialogue and talk about these things and participate through the system rather than go and riot like we saw the left do, so much in Charlottesville and all the things leading up to this.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely very dangerous right now. Like even Congress now has made everything set up that the US military can come in and shoot US citizens in the United
Right.
States.
Yeah. There was
So no
a
matter who
recent,
gets elected, this has now, you know what I mean? Like
yeah,
it feels like the awfulness, right, that my husband lived through as a kid. It feels like the awfulness that my family members have described to me of what they lived through in
right.
Bolivia. Yeah.
So tell me, like, if you can think of some specific examples, from what led to communism there. What things were you seeing happening leading up to it, compared to in the United States in this time?
Yeah, so in Bolivia, a big thing that was going on, like leading up to when my family had to leave, was that they were pitting basically the the white collar workers versus the blue collar workers,
Uh-huh.
essentially, right? We have different names for it, it's different industries, but it's essentially that, right?
Right.
So they had a lot of like white collar versus blue collar. Um, this race versus this race. Have we not
Right.
seen it here?
Yeah.
Oh, we had a lot of like, these people are marginalized, so we need to give them this from the other people in order to make things equitable. Are
Yeah,
we not hearing
equitable.
this right
Yes.
now?
Yes.
Right? And then as it's leading up into election times, or like, we have coups in Bolivia. We own it, right?
Yeah.
Um, we it's like leading up to those coups, it's like things are up on the news. people are talking about it, it's like this whole swelling of energy almost that you're feeling is
Yeah.
going through the country. And I was feeling it in 2020. I was like, this stuff is already happening. They've got everything in place. You know, my husband was having a hard time leaving the house for a bit in
Wow.
2020 because he was just like, it is just like Nicaragua. Like he was really having trouble with it.
Wow.
Um, and I was like, it's coming, like it's coming for us. Like I was starting to warn people and everyone was acting like I'm crazy. But
Yep.
now those people who've all told me that I'm crazy are all like, hey, I'm just have told me, you know, I'm going to go out and vote early because I'm a little bit worried about being at the polls on election day.
Right, right. Yeah, that's a thing. Like now that
Yeah.
we've seen the kind of rioting that can happen, that's set off by what's blown up in the media as a national story that wouldn't have normally been, like a supposedly white officer abusing or killing a black person, a
Yeah.
civilian. um, a lot of times, I mean, it goes both ways. These things happen both directions.
Yeah.
But you'll hear from the left that only white people can be racist, and black people or other colored skinned people are not
Yeah.
capable of being racist. And
Yeah.
that boggles my mind, the mental gymnastics that you have to go through to logic that. It's just the double think from 1984 that in real life,
Yeah.
it's mind blowing.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. 1984. I saw on about 1 year ago, I saw on there's a university campus that's just down the street from me, and some socialists, these are university students who are registered socialists for
Yeah.
voting. Okay.
Huh.
They were there
Good luck with
to,
that.
I know, they were there to protest that Florida was getting ready to take away freedom of speech on the college campuses, right? Because
Yeah.
the freedom of speech is swinging towards, hey, the leftists won't be able to speak freely anymore, but there's going to be some privilege for the righties. Okay.
Right.
I don't think any of this is correct, but hey, this is the life that we were in, right? So we had socialists and libertarians there to say, hey, we need our freedom of speech, and no one else showed up. Even freedom of religion. If you say something religious that is now considered controversial,
Yeah.
you can be removed from a college campus in
Well,
Florida
I
now.
I would say it depends on what religion you're talking about. I think if you are a professing Satanist, or you go to the Church of Satan,
Hmm.
that's a religion, right? I'm
Oh yeah,
libertarian in that way. You will actually probably get federal funding or grants to erect statues and things like that.
you might.
But if you're something opposed to that, say Christianity, um, then it will be taken down. You're a religious zealot. You're not allowed to express. You're not even allowed to talk about it. Certainly not have any icons or anything on display. That on its face is just hypocritical.
Yeah, what we've seen in Florida so far with like them starting to enforce it, they're starting to enforce it very lately, is that they're more so going after the Muslims.
Right. So, okay,
So
I'm glad you
yeah.
brought that up because I love the melting pot of America. I love that we
Mhm.
have multiple cultures that can contribute so much from the diversity of religions and backgrounds and culture and food, and I love all that.
Oh yes.
But there is an underlying a basic understanding that there is still the American culture based on the Constitution and freedoms and the ability to make something of yourself without trampling on the rights of everybody else. Now,
Correct.
there are certain cultures that where that's not allowed.
Hmm.
I would say that the Islamic State. All you have to do is look at any country where that is practiced, and Islam is actually the state, as opposed to in America where you're allowed to have any religion you want,
Yeah.
and supposedly you're free to practice whatever you want as long as you don't impose your views on everybody else.
Hmm.
But the left, who is screaming that they don't have those rights, they're trying to impose their beliefs on the right. But if they were to go to any Islamic state and spout off about all that, they'd be executed.
Yeah, you will be executed for being gay. Yeah.
Right, right. I mean, and you're
Yeah.
complaining about your rights to be gay, and it's like, God bless you. You know, I mean, well, probably not. I mean, I don't agree, but that's between you and God. I'm not going to tell
Right.
you, how to live. All I can do is point you
Yeah.
in the direction of what I believe is right, but
Yeah.
that's up to you. That's not so in other states. So there are at their core, are cultures that are just diametrically opposed to each other. Now, if you
Hmm.
come into the United States legally and you go through the process, that means you're free to practice your religion, but you're not allowed to impose it on other
Hmm.
people. And I feel like there are, and I mean, we can even point to foundations and non-governmental organizations that are doing this deliberately, like pumping in people from other cultures that they know are diametrically opposed to Western culture,
Hmm.
uh, to create this friction, and they're not being brought in legally. They're not going through the process, and so we're creating not a melting pot, but like a polarized nation where there's just all this infighting. And I think that's what's part of what's contributing to this powder keg. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
so
The
there's
loss of civility. Yeah.
right, right, and I'm all for the ideal of bringing different cultures together, but there's also the reality of how it's being done on the ground right now. How do you see all this right now with this massive immigration problem that we have? I think most people would agree that there's a problem.
Yeah. I it,
And
it
I should
feels it
say
feels really
illegal immigration.
horrible. Yeah, it feels really horrible from all sides, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like for example, here in Florida, we have a lot of migrants who do come in here with a visa to work the
Well,
farms.
there's
We
nothing
wouldn't
wrong
have
with
enough,
that.
yeah, we wouldn't have enough people to work the farms if they were not here. I mean, we
Sure.
need them. Um, and I've seen people, on the right jump to conclusions. People who are in office jump to conclusions and say they must all be illegals and they got bust here. And I'm telling them as someone who,
Right.
when I was in high school, I worked on a farm. I worked with migrant workers. I can speak Spanish fluently. And I've said, hey, let's not jump to conclusions because
Right.
migrant workers are also brought around in these certain ways, and they're not illegals. They have every right to be here. The stamp is on their paper, right? Like
Right.
every but the rights, I'll see them jump to conclusions that they're here illegally and this must be this thing. And all of a sudden they're protesting and they're screaming horrible things at these people, telling them to go back home. And I'm like, they're just here trying to make some money to send it back to their family. And then
Right.
the left all of a sudden gets involved and then they start screaming about something else. And I'm like, everyone needs to stop screaming. Like, we need to talk. Can any of you actually speak Spanish? Like, can you talk with these people and find out how they got here?
Right.
And then, and I've seen people who are elected into office who have changed their name to make it be more Hispanic sounding, right?
Yeah.
So that they look like they're the minority vote, but they're actually not Hispanic and they can't even speak any Spanish at all. And then they're just
Yeah.
jumping to these conclusions. And I'm like everything really feels like it's just like being set up to be the horrible powder keg. And there are going to be people who are going to be pawns in this and
Right.
they're going to get
That's
harmed by it. And
right.
I'm like, we need to stop harming people. Like, so maybe those people coming in who are the migrant workers don't have that much of an education. Maybe they can't read that much, but my God, they will work hard. Like, we should not be screaming at them. We should still treat them as human beings. And maybe the right and the left are both wrong about whatever it is going on that day.
Right.
But there is no like, we've lost, our family units here in the United States. We are missing the older, wiser grandparents and great uncles and great aunts who would say, everyone sit down. Now we're going to work it out. We have lost that from our society. And if we just keep on screaming at each other over all these issues, no one's going to get to the bottom of it. No one's going to figure out who these people actually are. And everyone's just going to keep on hating each other.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I'm seeing it. I'm seeing it from people who I know should be very, very good people. And I keep on telling myself they're very good people. But I'm even seeing them turning and they're starting to say awful things about Latinos. And I'm like, and I have to hold my tongue because I'm like, I know that they're being programmed. I know this is being programmed into them,
Right.
right? Both sides are screaming about certain things. And I'm like, and sometimes I've had to look at some of these people and I have been like, I know you're a good person and I know you have deep humanity inside of you. And I know that I will be able to see it. But for right now, I need to walk away from this conversation.
Yeah.
And I've had to walk away and then come back and have a level head 2 days later. It's hard here. And I feel like all I want to do is just beg people to please slow down and just think. And if you're
Yeah.
gonna, you know what I mean? Like both sides, like the left screams about love in their way, the right screams about love in their way. And I'm like, if you're actually loving people from your heart and if you're seeing everyone as a child of God, like let's have patience and love for each other, please, and stop screaming. Like it does feel like it's all made up to just be a big powder keg that's and people are going to get hurt who are put in the middle of this, and I
Yeah.
don't like that.
I think that's a really good message, Isabel. And we really do need to stop, think rationally. And I feel like the enemy is not the other viewpoints. Again, I think we all want the same things. We want to live
Yes.
our lives and pursue our dreams. But I feel like the enemy is really the media and the foundations that are pumping money into these. A lot of times, like these protests are not even organic; they're being funded.
No.
Uh,
Yes.
I mean, we can follow the money trail. I try
Yeah.
to explain that to a lot of my friends on the left. It's like, the Antifa is not genuine. Black Lives Matter, I think, started out as a genuine, concern
Yeah. Yeah, I
organization,
do agree there.
but they got infiltrated just like the governments have, just like the media
Yeah.
has, and
Yeah.
it's gotten to the point where the founders of BLM uh, get caught moving out of their poor minority neighborhoods into rich white neighborhoods. Now that they've made their
Mhm.
millions, I'm like, the hypocrisy is just,
It's
just
astounding.
it is amazing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel like the most important message is to yeah, dialogue, be rational, and do not believe everything you see on the mainstream media. Look, read history
Yes.
and talk to actual people on both sides.
Yeah, speak to people on both sides. I mean, I even went, I have the Brave browser on my phone, and I even went on my Brave browser and you can select what news you see and everything like that.
Right.
I very purposely put on there that I am seeing news from libertarian left and right sources. So
Uh-huh.
then I kind of see how everyone is being told these certain things, here's what to think and everything like that. And I also get international news all the time. Most of
Yeah.
it is actually international news, but for American news, I'm looking at left and I'm looking at right, and then I'm looking at people who are more libertarian leaning. And then I'm making my own decisions. And I feel like all of us at this
Use your
point
own
have to
mind.
be doing
That's
something
right.
like this. Or you get carried away into fear. And I'm like, and I think at this point, we're all adults. We all know any decision made out of fear is most likely going to be a very bad decision. Any
Absolutely. Well,
decision that you
that's
make out of love
yeah.
is going to lead you down the right path.
That is a psychological fact, and I think that is taken advantage of and manipulated intentionally, again, by a lot of
Hmm.
the media. As somebody who has studied a lot of sales and marketing, I know these techniques.
Yes.
Not I know not everybody pays attention to that, but I can see it. It's just the propaganda is super obvious.
Oh
We're
yeah,
just
it's
about out of
obvious.
time as well,
Yeah.
but I wanted to, if anybody would like to learn more about what you're doing and what
Hmm.
your agenda is, what's the best? Do you have a website that we can send people to?
Yes. Yes. So we have a website. It's flfreedomfam.me. And that's also our handle on Instagram and Telegram. And I'm working on maybe making a Twitter account. So,
Nice. For the moment, you can
yes,
without
for the
fear of
moment I
reprisal.
can.
So that's FLFREEDOMFAM.me.
Yes, that's it.
Awesome. Folks, please go visit Isabel for more wisdom and good words on the state of what's going on with our cultural differences and similarities. That's really good stuff. Well, it's
Thanks.
been a pleasure talking to you, Isabel. And
Yes.
maybe we can talk again about this. I'd like to maybe dig into a little more of the COVID agenda and what might be coming to down the track. But
Oh yeah, for sure.
awesome. Well, until next time, folks, be good. Make sure you do the right thing and keep asking questions. Take care.
That's right.